Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing the wheel bearing and hub on this 2009 Titan, and this should fall in line with any first-gen Titan, which is 2004 to 2015. So let's get into it now. Alright, so the first thing, of course, is getting the wheel off. Now, the lug nuts are a 21 mil. I'm just going to take an impact, shoot these right off, and let's go ahead and get the rest of these lug nuts off and get the wheel off. Alright, so the next move here is to disassemble the brakes. We're going to go ahead and get the caliper off. So first thing I'm going to do is shoot off this 12 mil to get the brake hose off of the mount. Alright, that right off. From there, we should be able to wiggle that hose right on off. All right, and then from there, we're going to get the caliper mount bolts, which are these two 17 mils. And I'm going to do the same thing and just take an impact, and we're going to shoot those right off. All right, broke both of those loose. We go ahead and get both bolts out, and then from here, we should be able to just wiggle this caliper right off. Not the easiest one-handed, but there we go. Got that off, and I'm just going to let it rest right there for right now. All right, now that we have the caliper off, we can go ahead and pull our pads off. Should pop right out, shouldn't take too much effort. All right, we got both of those off. And now what we're going to do is get the caliper bracket off. So to approach this, there's just two 18 mil bolts holding it into the knuckle. So same thing, we're going to put the 18 on there. We're just going to shoot it right off with the impact. Now, to get easier access to these with the impact, you can just push this, turn the wheel. I have the caliper now resting on top of the strut mount there, and that gives us just enough room to back these 18 caliper bracket bolts right out. One. There we go. Got both of those out, so all we got to do is finish those off with our hand here. Now, you just want to be careful when you do the upper one because it does free up the bracket, and if you don't hold it in place, it will fall off and hit the ground. So just be careful when you get the bolts out because it is free and it will fall and hit the ground. So see, as it's loosened up there, sliding right off. All right, now we essentially have all the brakes off, got the bracket and the caliper and the pads off. All we're left with here is the rotor. Now, if you're lucky, this might be loose and you could slide it right off. It's probably a good chance it won't be, and it's probably rusted to the hub. So what you're gonna need to do is give it a little bit of force or heat in order to get it off. There's a couple different ways you can go about getting a rotor off. Personally, I like taking a heavy rubber dead blow and just moving around it and getting it off that way, and it doesn't damage the rotor. So let's go ahead, give this thing a few whacks, and we should be able to pop that thing right off. There it is. Give it some whacks, guys, and it should eventually free up all that rust and allow the rotor to come right off of the hub. All right, so now we have the hub exposed, all the brakes are disassembled, so we're gonna go ahead and approach this axle nut. So first thing here is we're gonna get this cotter pin out. I'm just gonna take some snips, I'm gonna bend it back into the hole. We should be able to maneuver it enough to pull it right on out. Might have to hit it a little bit, but see, we got it right out, freed it up. And now we have access to the axle nut, and we can shoot that right off. All right, we got the cotter pin out now. Now we can approach this axle nut. So what I'm gonna do before I bother trying to get it off, I am gonna heat it up a bit with a torch just to give us the best possible outcome of allowing this thing to free up and shoot right off. So I'm just gonna take a torch and heat it up for a minute, and then we're gonna shoot that thing right off with the impact. All right, we got that thing pretty warm there with a torch. Now, this is a 32 mil. So the axle nut is a 32. I'm just gonna shoot it right off with the impact. There it is, right off. All right, now all we have to do is get this hub freed up from the 3 bolts holding it into the knuckle. So the 3 bolts are 18 mils. Now you can see them on the front side here. You might want to turn the wheel a bit to get better access to them, but here's one there, there's one right there, and there's another one down on the other side here. So it's probably going to be easiest to use a small 18 with an extension to get enough clearance on this axle, because if you use like a thick impact deep socket, it's probably going to hit right up against the axle there. So this little extension with an adapter into the 18 there should probably be your best bet. Now what I'm going to do is, before I take each one of these out, I'm going to do the same thing, just put a little bit of heat on this side with a torch just to ease them out a little bit easier, and then we're going to take an impact and shoot it right off. So we'll start with this one. I'm going to put a tad bit of heat right here, and then from there we're going to go ahead, shoot that thing right on out. All right, we got that thing a bit toasty, so let's get that 18 on the back. We should be able to back this thing right out. Damn, nope, we are not. More heat. All right, so we got that thing pretty warm now, so we should be able to shoot it right out with this impact. There it is. Just takes a little bit of heat. So now we're just going to do the same thing for the other 2. All right, so we got this one pretty toasty too. Just to give you another example of how you can get this off without an impact, I have the same setup, just a small 18, small extension on a breaker bar. So honestly, this thing is warm enough that we should be able to start, turning it with the breaker bar, and that was actually pretty simple there, guys. So that thing is moving perfect. Should be able to pull it out with an impact or with the breaker bar. All right, guys, it's working on this last one, giving it a bit of heat, and then we're going to back that last one right off. All right, impact on that last one. Just be careful of the axle back here. Got it started, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish that thing off with the socket, just to not blast it out all crazy in this tight space. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that last one out, and then we'll have all 3 bolts out of the hub. All right, now that we have the 3 bolts that are holding the hub in, we can actually start approaching getting this thing off. Now, this is the fun part, and you might be able to, if you're extremely lucky, maybe hit it a few times. Maybe it'll start freeing up, but it's a 99.9999 chance that this is not gonna happen. So, in my opinion, I'm not even going to approach trying to whack this thing off. Obviously, there's different ways to approach it. You can use a sledgehammer, you can use a heavy mallet, you know, anything could really start working this off. So I'm not even going to approach whacking this thing and going crazy on it. So what we're going to do is knock 2 studs out, and then from there, I'll show you exactly how we're going to get this out. All right, now the easiest place probably to get a stud out is going to be right here. There's the most room for it to fly out. So I'm going to knock this stud out, and then we're going to spin the opposing side right here, and we're going to knock that one out too. So let's get both of these studs out, and I'll show you how we're going to get this hub off. All right, so I have a 4-pound mallet. I'm just going to whack that stud right off. Bang. All right, same thing. We're going to get to this one right here, get it in position just underneath the ABS sensor. See, it's diagonally across. Out. All right, so we got 2 studs out, and now we're going to go ahead and get this hub off. All right, so what we have here is 2 1/2 by 6-inch bolts and 2 1/2 nuts. Now we are essentially going to use these as a press. Now I have used these in the past on different hubs, so these do work for different hubs. They are a bit beat on the first threads from using them, but we should be able to get these on here just fine. So what you want to do is get your hub aligned about right here, And we're essentially going to feed this through, and we're going to be using these as a press to help persuade this hub to come off. All right, now you can see that's touching right there. So now we're going to take our nut, pull this back a hair, and just start threading our nut on. And then we just want to get this so the nut is flush with the back of the hub. All right, so you can see we have the one in there. Got it right here on the knuckle, and we have the nut flush. Now on the other side, there's really no way to do this evenly without, you know, getting onto the dust plate. So you might compromise the dust plate a bit doing this. It might bend it a little bit, or, you know, give it a little bit of marking, but I mean, it's kind of just a sacrifice with the job, in my opinion. And what I did on the other side, I actually cleaned it up and rust reform it, and you wouldn't even know it was there. So you can clean this up and make it look like nothing is there. So we're going to do the same thing with this one. Slide this in, I'm gonna get the nut started, and then we're going to have position on this side right here. All right, so we have this one in now as well. You can see it's right up against this dust shield, locked in. So we have both sides locked in. Now, of course, the goal is we're going to use this as a press. We're going to bounce back and forth between these two to tighten these, and it'll slowly push the hub out. Now, I'm actually going to do a little bit more persuading and heat this back up again around the edge, just to help make it want to come out a little bit more. You don't have to do that. You could probably still get it out, but just keep in mind, you don't want one of these on the hub, of course, because we're trying to push the hub off of the knuckle. So these bolts need to be mounted onto the knuckle in order for it to work as a press to help allow this to come off. Now, in my opinion, you know, these two spots are probably the best. I don't really see any other spot where you wouldn't be hitting the dust shield. You know, that's just my opinion, of course, and that's where I have it aligned, and I've been successful on this particular vehicle doing this before, so that's just for reference. But let's go ahead and I'll show you guys how we're going to go ahead and get this thing off. All right, so we're just going to bounce back and forth between these two to tighten them and help pry this thing off. So I heated it up a bit, so we should be able to start pressing this thing, and it should start separating. So I'm going to do it slowly with an impact. You could do it with a socket wrench, either or, but we're going to go ahead and try to start with this right here with an impact. Now these are 19 mils. You're probably going to want to put a 19 mil wrench on it, you know what I mean, on the nut to get leverage, and then start tightening it up. I want to go ahead and put the camera down and see if you guys can get a better view of this while I do it. All right, you hear it start to lock in. All right, and I'm just going to keep going back and forth between the two. Alright guys, so made a bit of progress. I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of separation on this side, not much anywhere else. So looks like I'm going to have to give it some wax with a hammer. So took those out. We're just going to give it a few hits on each side to help loosen it up, and then we should be able to put our press bolts back in there, and from there we should be able to go ahead and get this thing right on out. So let's give this thing a few whacks, guys, and hopefully it'll break up enough for us to get the rest of this out with the press. All right, so I'm just going to hit this thing with the same 4-pound hammer I did to get the studs out. We're going to hit where those studs are out, and we should be able to break up some of that rust weld. So all right, so after a little bit of banging, got our press back on, as you can see, and she's starting to separate just the slightest bit. So this thing was really on here. I mean, honestly, most of the time you should be able to just put the press on once, and then, you know, that'll start getting it free. But you can see we got a little bit of separage there, so I'm just going to keep cranking on these, and might have to get a little more heat involved, but I'll bring you guys back when it's starting to come out even more. All right, she's starting to separate here, as you can see. So I still have these pretty darn tight, and I'm just taking this mallet, going around the back of it, just trying to work it out a hair more. So I'm just gonna hit this a few times all the way around, and we should be able to start freeing this thing up. All right, got that separation we needed, guys, so I'm just going to keep working this thing slightly with this hammer. All right, so this thing is just about free. See, it's about to fall out. So what we need to do real quick is just disconnect the ABS harness. There's just a little push tab right there, and if you want, you can even pop it off. Now this harness might have a lot of corrosion in it. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, look at all that falling out. So it might be really, really tight. I just popped it off of the mount, and I pressed the tab really hard with a pick, and it allowed me to wiggle this off, and it broke that corrosion free. So now all we need to do is just pop this off the whole way down, all our little rubber grommets to free this thing up. There we go. We should be able to drop that thing right off, guys. So I'm gonna slide this off of the axle and the hub will be free. All right, now our dust shield, it didn't get too beat up. Honestly, it's pretty even and pretty intact. Doesn't look horrific. It just has that mark from the imprint of the bolt where we were pressing onto it. So I'm just gonna beat it a little bit back out right there and should be all right. All right, so we're ready for the reassembly here. Now I did clean this area up with some brake cleaner. I took a paper towel and went around the edge just to clean all this up, get all the rust and a little bit of the corrosion away. So we're good there. All right, so we got our new part here. I got the Moog hub. So all we're gonna do is go ahead and put this thing in, just slide it right back into place with the dust plate, and then we're gonna finger tight the 3 bolts back into the knuckle, and then we're gonna torque them to spec from there. All right, now we did bang this thing back into shape, so don't forget to put your dust plate on. On the passenger side here, it's oriented with this side facing the tie rod on the front. All right, now we'll go ahead and slide our new hub on. And I did brake clean this because it does have a lot of grease from the factory on there, new. Okay, so we just got to get the splines aligned here. All right, we got the splines aligned. All right, got this dust plate back into place. Now, if you remember, the ABS sensor was right here, so I want to make sure you get it in the right way, in the right orientation there. All right, so pretty much got that back into place, got that pretty tight. So I'm just going to take one of these bolts, try to start feeding it through the back here. Should be able to grab a couple threads on the hub, and it should be able to hold it in place. All right, so I got this top one started. See it coming through the other side, and what I'm going to do is just take the other 2 and start finger tightening them in through the back. All right, so I got all 3 just about finger tight. Now I'm going to take a 3/8 drive, little extension, in our 18 here, and I'm just going to slightly tighten these in right now. We are going to torque these to spec, but I'm just going to bounce from each one, just make sure they're all just about tight, and then we're going to go ahead and torque them from there. All right, they're all just a hair tight, so all those are good. The hub is aligned, it's pulled in. So what we're going to do now is torque each one of these to spec. All right, so let's go ahead and torque these 3 18 mils to spec. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the wheel all the way so we can get room in here with the torque wrench like we did when we used the impact to get them out. So these 18 mils are 107 foot-pounds. So we got the torque wrench locked in at 107. Let's go ahead and start tightening this thing down. Actually, that feels pretty tight. I don't think I can go any farther, to be honest. I didn't get a click, but let's go ahead and try this upper one here. Same thing. And I do have the same extension combination. Actually, let me pull that one in a hair. And I'm actually going to go to this back one here. So I'm going to turn this the other way. Torque that back one. Yeah, same deal, guys. That feels really tight, and I don't want to snap the bolt, so I got it at 107, but we might be able to go a little bit lower, like to 100, and it might click at that, just to ensure we're pretty tight. So we got this one tight, this one tight. Let's get this upper one fully tightened in now. Torque wrench still. We'll see if we get a click on this one. If not, I'm not stressing it, but yeah, she's on there. So I'm just going to go to 100 on this. See if we'll get a click at 100. At least let us know we're. Yep. Okay. So I had it at 107. I was a bit scared to fully get it to that 107 because it really felt like it was about to snap, and you can kind of tell by feeling it. But yep, that one's good too. So they're all good, guys. Torqued in all three of our bolts. So let's turn this back and get all this finished. All right, so we got our 3 hub bolts torqued to spec. So now we're going to go ahead and route this ABS line. Let's just get it out of the way so we don't damage it. So we're just pressing all our rubber grommets right back into where they go. Just going here. Okay. Got this one right here. All right, looking pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and plug our harness back in. Plugged up, and they do come, well, at least this Moog one comes with a new clip, so we can press it right back into place on the frame, and there we go. ABS line is rerouted. So now from here, our hub is essentially installed. We're just going to go ahead and get the brakes and everything back together, and we should be good, guys. All right, so we got that ABS line back into place. Looks good, everything's good. We got it out of the way. So now I'm going to take the axle nut, start it off right there, and I'm just going to take an impact, and for now we're going to lightly shoot this back on. All right, remember it is a 32 mil. All right, this on a light setting here. All right, so we got that pretty tight with the impact. We'll see if we can get that torque to spec. But from here, essentially our hub is installed. Everything is good. We got the line in, hub is installed. So now let's reassemble the brakes. All right, so now that we have the hub installed, we can go ahead and reassemble the brakes. I got the rotor here. Now, this is an ideal time to do new brakes, rotors, you know, if you need them or want to do them. We are going to use this rotor again. This rotor is actually brand new, even though it doesn't look 100%, but for now he just wants to go back with the original brakes. Pads, they really aren't too bad off. So whether you're using old stuff or getting new stuff, you know, it's up to you. But so I put a lug nut here just to hold this in place, makes it a little bit easier. In fact, I'm even going to put another one right here just to hold this thing in place. You can finger tighten these things right on. All right, so now we have our rotor locked in and it won't flex or anything during the reassembly of the brakes. So rotor's in, now let's go ahead and get the caliper bracket on. All right, so we got both of these finger tight. One thing you do want to check on the bracket is make sure your slide pins have play. I actually just had one of these was seized on here, so I had to take it out, and well, it took me a while to get out, I should say, and I had to grease it back up, but got both of these good, guys. So now what we're going to do is turn the wheel again all the way just to get room for the torque wrench so we can torque both of these brake bolts to spec. Now the torque spec for these 18 mils is 155 foot-pounds, so I'll go ahead and lock this in at 155. Just be careful of your ABS wire right there going to your new hub. All right, got that one locked in. This upper one locked in as well. All right, both of those are locked in, 155. Now let's go ahead and get the caliper and the brakes back together. All right, so caliper bracket's back on. Time to get the pads back into the bracket. So I have a little bit of brake grease here. I'm going to put it on these end tabs. All right, you don't got to go crazy and drench it, just a little bit. All All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pop this thing right back into place. Should fall right in, as that just did. Now we're gonna do the same thing for the front one. A little bit of grease on here. We're gonna press this one back in. Look at those pads, they still look brand new. Like I said, this is the ideal time to do new pads and rotors if you need them. All right, they're both in there good. So we have our pads in. All right, now we just want to throw our caliper back over our pads. So I'm also going to hit this with a little bit of grease. I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the pistons and on the contact points on the front of the caliper where it slides over the pads. All right, so we got this thing all greased up. I'm just going to slide it right back over our pads. You might need to press the pad in while you're going over it, but it should fall right over. Just like that. All right, and you should see your hose fall back into place. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing over while it's still loose. There we go. I'm gonna just finger tight this guy back on there. All right, so now that our caliper's on, we just need to go ahead and align our slide pins, and then we're gonna put our 17 mils right back into the slide pins, and we're gonna go ahead and finger tight these in, and then we'll torque them to spec. All right, now the torque spec for these two 17 mils is 53 foot-pounds. See if I can slide my torque wrench in there. All right, got that one locked in. Let's get this lower one now. 53 foot-pounds. All right, locked in, guys. So we got both of those 17 mils torqued to 53 foot-pounds. Just make sure the brake feels good. Give the rotor a spin, make sure we don't have any noise, and we don't, which is great. Bearing's good, rotor's good, brake's good. Now all we're gonna do is shoot this brake hose 12 mil nut right back on. I'm just gonna take an impact on a low setting here. Bang. That thing's back on nice and tight. Good to go, our hose is good. Everything is assembled. Now the last thing I'm gonna do is just ensure our axle nut is tight. Now the torque spec is 101, although if you put a torque wrench on here, it's probably gonna spin and make the hub and all that spin. So I'm on a low setting here with the impact. Just gonna make sure that she's tight, not moving. She's good, guys. Not moving. All right, so I'll take that. That's what I did on the other side. Now all we gotta do is slide the cotter pin right back into our hole and we're fully assembled. All right, now the old cotter pin has seen better days. It's all right because we got a new one, so just gonna slide it through the hole. Take these snips here. I'm just gonna bend these sides up. Now you want to make sure it's pressed away from the hub here and where the wheel mounts, and then it's not making contact, but we're good. Cotter pin in, guys, so we are fully reassembled. All right, so hopefully this helped with the removal of the hub bearing and installing the hub bearing on your first gen Titan. Make sure you stay tuned to the channel because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. Make sure you stay tuned for more builds, how-tos, anything automotive related, guys. So until next time.